All right, get ready to dive deep into wellness today because you gave us this guide, and wow, it is packed with information.
It really is. It covers everything from diet and exercise to mental well-being and even the impact of our surroundings.
It's not just like hitting the gym or, eating your veggies. It's like all these different pieces fit together for a healthy life. So where do we even begin with something this big?
Well, the guide starts with defining wellness, and it's actually more than you might think.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's not just about not being sick. It's about making choices that lead to a fulfilling life, both physically and mentally.
Okay, so it's about taking charge, not just kind of hoping for the best. This guide dives into some interesting choices, starting with diet.
Right, and it breaks down 4 main types: vegan, pescatarian, vegetarian, and omnivore. And it doesn't just list them, it looks at what makes each one unique and how you can make it work for you.
Let's start with veganism. No animal products, like anything. I have to admit, I struggle to imagine a day without cheese, let alone meat.
It might seem restrictive, but the guides emphasizes how many plant-based foods there are and the creativity you can have in the kitchen. The guide even has some tasty-sounding vegan recipes, like a spinach and banana smoothie for breakfast.
Okay.
A quinoa salad with chickpeas and avocado for lunch.
Okay, that sounds good.
And a tofu stir-fry for dinner.
Those actually sound pretty good. Maybe I need to rethink veganism. What about the pescatarian diet?
This one includes fish and seafood, but no other meat. One thing that stood out to me is how it says to choose sustainable seafood. It even recommends specific certifications to look for.
So it's not just about you being healthy, but about the planet's health too. I like that. What about the meals it suggests?
It starts with Greek yogurt, berries, and flax seeds for breakfast.
Okay.
For lunch, grilled salmon with greens and quinoa.
Oh.
And for dinner, a shrimp stir-fry with whole grain noodles.
Okay, I am officially hungry. Let's move on to vegetarianism. The guide mentions that this requires careful planning to get all the nutrients.
Right.
What should we keep in mind?
Well, the guide really stresses protein, iron, and B12, which can be harder to get enough of on a vegetarian diet. It recommends things like legumes, nuts and seeds, and fortified foods to fill those gaps.
Interesting how each diet has different things to keep in mind. I'm guessing the omnivorous diet has its own challenges, even though it's the most flexible.
Absolutely. The guide really emphasizes choosing whole foods over processed ones, even if you're eating a bit of everything. It wants you to think about the quality of your food, not just how much you're eating.
So it's about being mindful even with more flexibility. All right, we've covered fuel, now let's get moving. There's a whole section on exercise, right?
Yes, and it really emphasizes regular activity, not just random bursts. It says to aim for at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise each week.
That seems doable, but what does moderate or vigorous even mean?
Well, the guide gives examples. Moderate would be things like brisk walking, swimming, dancing, or even gardening. Vigorous would be like running, jumping rope, or high-impact sports.
I like how it includes dancing and gardening. It shows that exercise can be fun. But what about strength training? I'm not really a weights person.
I used to think strength training was all about getting big muscles, but the guide highlights some other benefits, like stronger bones and even better sleep. And it doesn't have to be lifting heavy weights. Even body weight exercises like push-ups and squats are really effective.
Okay, you might be convincing me to add some strength training. The guide also talks about flexibility and balance, right?
Yes, and it stresses the importance of those for preventing injuries and staying mobile as we age. It recommends things like yoga, Pilates, or even just simple stretching.
I am pretty good at the stretching, especially after a long day at my computer. Speaking of which, the guide talks about how important our environment is. It's not just about what we eat and how we move, but the spaces we're in.
Exactly. It highlights 3 key parts of a healthy environment: air quality, safety, and ergonomics.
Let's start with air quality. I don't really think about it much unless there's visible smog. What does it say?
It recommends making sure your home and workspace have good ventilation and using natural cleaning products. It even says to use air purifying plants.
That's a good point. I need to pay more attention to the air, even indoors. What about safety?
It really emphasizes creating a safe and secure environment both at home and work. This includes stuff like checking for hazards, having enough light, and making sure smoke detectors are working. It even suggests having a plan for emergencies like fires or natural disasters.
Good point. It's easy to forget those things. And finally, ergonomics. I am definitely guilty of too much time hunched over my laptop.
It has a whole section on setting up your workspace in a healthy way. It suggests things like a chair with back support, positioning your computer screen at eye level, and taking breaks to move around and stretch.
Okay, definitely taking notes on that. It's amazing how those small things can add up.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot on the physical side of things, but this deep dive wouldn't be complete without mental well-being. What does it say about that?
It says mental well-being isn't just about feeling happy all the time, but about being ready to handle the ups and downs in life. It's about building resilience, managing stress, and having a sense of purpose.
That makes sense. It's about having the tools to navigate challenges and find joy even when things are tough. What kind of tools does it recommend?
Well, it talks about mental exercises, techniques that help train your mind, just like physical exercise trains your body. Some might sound familiar. Things like making time for yourself, cognitive behavioral techniques, journaling, and gratitude practice.
Okay, those sound intriguing, but also kind of vague. Can we break a few of those down?
Absolutely. Let's start with making time for yourself. The guide really stresses that you need to make self-care a priority even when you are busy. It suggests setting aside even 10 or 20 minutes a day for things that nourish your soul, whether that's meditating, reading, a walk in nature, or even just a cup of tea in silence.
I love that. It's a good reminder that self-care isn't selfish. What about these cognitive behavioral techniques? That sounds intimidating.
It sounds complicated, but the guide actually explains it pretty simply. CBT is basically about understanding your thought patterns and learning to challenge thoughts that aren't helpful or negative, like retraining your brain to think more positively and realistically.
So you become your own thought coach. That's pretty cool. What about journaling? I've always struggled to make it a habit.
It says it can be hard to stick with, but highlights the benefits like processing emotions, getting clarity, and even boosting your creativity. It suggests starting small, maybe just 5 or 10 minutes a day, and writing whatever comes to mind without judging it.
Maybe I'll try that again. And finally, gratitude practice. I hear a lot about this, but still feel a little skeptical. Does the guide actually talk about its benefits?
It does. It says this practice is simple but powerful. It suggests taking a few minutes each day to write down 3 things you're grateful for, no matter how small. It says this can change your perspective, make you happier, and even improve your physical health.
I'm noticing a theme here. A lot of these mental well-being techniques are about small, consistent actions that can really add up.
Exactly.
It's about building healthy habits for our minds and bodies. And that brings the question, how do we actually make all this part of our daily lives? It's easy to feel overwhelmed.
Luckily, the guide doesn't just throw all this information at us. It gives specific routines for the morning, workday, and evening that are designed to weave wellness practices into our lives.
Okay, that sounds much better than trying to change everything at once. Let's start with morning. What does it recommend?
It says there are 3 key things: hydration, activity, and a healthy breakfast. It suggests starting your day with a glass of water to rehydrate and kickstart your metabolism.
I can definitely get on board with that. I'm usually reaching for coffee before anything else.
It also recommends a 15 to 20 minute morning workout. This doesn't have to be anything crazy. It could be stretching, yoga, a brisk walk, or even just dancing for a few minutes.
I love that it says to find something you enjoy, because if you dread it, you're not going to do it.
Exactly. And finally, it recommends a healthy breakfast with protein, healthy fats, and carbs.
Makes sense. Starting your day with good food gives you energy. What about the workday routine? I'm at a desk most of the day.
It actually comes back to some things we talked about earlier. It says ergonomics are important. Having a comfy workspace, taking breaks to move around and stretch, and paying attention to your posture.
Okay, good reminder to practice what we preach. I definitely get caught slouching over my keyboard.
It also says to snack healthy throughout the day. Ditch the junk food and go for things like fruit, nuts, or yogurt.
I am all about that. I feel so much better when I'm eating good foods. What about the evening routine? I'm guessing it's all about unwinding and getting ready for bed.
You got it. It recommends doing things that help you relax, having a balanced dinner, and practicing good sleep hygiene.
All right, break those down for me. What kind of relaxing activities does it suggest?
Oh, things like reading, taking a bath, spending time with people you care about, listening to music or meditation.
So it's about finding what helps you de-stress and switch from being busy to resting. What about dinner?
A balanced meal that gives you nutrients but doesn't feel too heavy before bed. It suggests things like lean protein, vegetables, and whole grains.
That sounds like a good way to end the day. And finally, there's sleep hygiene. I'm really bad at that. I'm always on my phone in bed.
I think we all do that sometimes. The guide says it's important to keep a regular sleep schedule. Make your bedroom dark and quiet, and avoid screens for at least an hour before bed. It even suggests blackout curtains and a white noise machine to block out distractions.
Okay, those are good tips. I am going to try to use those. It's amazing how all these different parts of wellness, from diet and exercise to mental well-being and our environment, are connected.
Yeah, it really is.
It's not about checking things off a list. It's about a lifestyle that supports your overall well-being on every level.
I agree.
And this guide gives us a great roadmap for that journey. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to talk about something I've been thinking about. This guide focuses on individual wellness. What about the role of community and social connections in our overall well-being?
That's a great point and something we'll definitely discuss in our next segment. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive on wellness. You know, last time we talked a lot about individual choices like diet, exercise, and creating a supportive environment. But we ended on a really interesting question
Yeah.
about the role of community and social connections in all this.
Right? It's not like we're just alone. Our relationships and sense of belonging, those matter too.
Right. Absolutely. And while this guide doesn't really get into it, there's so much research out there on the impact of social connection.
Oh, yeah.
It's huge. So how does having these strong social connections actually translate into better health?
Well, for one, it can really help with stress. When you have people to talk to and share your problems with, it helps you deal with life's challenges.
It's like a support system, people to help you when things get tough.
Exactly. And it's not just about venting either. Strong social connections give you a sense of belonging and purpose, which can be really motivating.
So it's not just feeling less bad, it's feeling more good.
Right. And there's even evidence that strong social ties can make your physical health better too, like boosting your immune system, lowering your blood pressure, and even helping you live longer.
Wow, that's amazing. It's not just some feel-good idea, there's actual science behind it.
Definitely. And on the flip side, being isolated and lonely has been linked to a lot of negative health outcomes, like higher risk of depression, anxiety, heart disease, and even problems with your thinking as you age.
That's kind of scary. It makes you realize how important it is to have relationships and be part of a community.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you can work on this just like you work on your diet or exercise routine.
So what are some practical things people can do to build those strong connections?
It can be as simple as making an effort with people you already know. Call your friends and family, plan get-togethers, even just a phone call instead of texting all the time.
It's about being more intentional with how we interact.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to try new things and meet new people. Join a club, volunteer, take a class, anything that you're interested in that lets you interact with others.
It's about creating those spaces for connections to happen.
Right. And remember, it's not just about how many connections you have, but how good they are. Focus on relationships where you feel supported and valued.
So be picky with your energy and invest in relationships that actually make your life better.
Exactly. Now here's something to think about. We often talk about individual wellness journeys, but what if we thought of it as something we do together?
Oh, I like that. It's like we're all on this together, helping each other along the way.
Exactly. What if we focused on not just our own well-being, but on creating communities where everyone can be well?
That's a powerful idea. It changes the focus from self-improvement to being well together, which honestly feels a lot better and more inspiring in the long run.
Absolutely. And it comes back to what we talked about earlier, finding purpose. What if part of your purpose is to help others be well too?
It's like a ripple effect. Our actions can make things better for others, creating a more positive environment for everyone.
Now bringing this back to you, the listener. You're on your own wellness journey, exploring all these different aspects of physical and mental well-being. But as you make these choices, remember the power of connection.
Right. Don't forget about the people around you, your friends, family, community.
It can be a source of strength and support, and you can be that for them too.
It's a beautiful cycle. We lift each other up and make a stronger, more vibrant group.
Now, I know we've been focusing on the good things about social connections, but it's important to remember that relationships can be hard sometimes.
Yeah, it's not always easy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's important to have healthy boundaries, to know when a relationship might be taking away your energy instead of giving you energy.
So it's not just about connecting with everyone, it's about being smart about it.
Exactly. And sometimes that might mean letting go of relationships that aren't good for you anymore.
It's about putting your own well-being first, even in relationships.
And it's also important to remember that asking for help is a good thing. If you're feeling lonely or having problems with relationships, don't be afraid to talk to a therapist or counselor.
They can give you support and help you through those challenges.
Now, before we move on, I want to talk about something that comes up a lot when we discuss social connections. The idea that being extroverted makes it easier, like it's something you're born with.
Right, like it's a personality trait that you either have or you don't.
Exactly. But here's the thing, even though some people might be naturally more outgoing, you can learn and improve your social skills over time.
So even if you're an introvert, you can still have close, meaningful relationships.
Absolutely. It might just take more effort.
And it's about finding ways to connect that feel right and comfortable for you.
For example, maybe you like talking to one person at a time instead of big groups.
Or maybe you connect better when you have shared interests instead of just making small talk.
Exactly. The important thing is to find what works for you and challenge any ideas you might have about not being able to build relationships.
And remember, it's okay to take your time. Don't compare yourself to others or try to be someone you're not.
Building social connections is a journey, and every step you take toward those meaningful relationships makes your life better.
That's a great way to put it. Now, before we finish this segment, I want to bring up something. We've been talking about community and social connections, but so much of that happens online these days.
Ah, yes, the digital age. It's a really interesting topic.
Right. Technology helps us stay in touch with people far away.
And it lets us connect with people who share our interests from all over the world.
But at the same time, there's this worry that being online is replacing real human connection.
And that this can make us feel lonely, even when we're constantly connected.
So the question is, how do we use this technology in a way that makes us feel good instead of bad?
That's what we'll talk about in our final segment. We'll look at the pros and cons of being online and how to find a healthy balance between the digital world and the real world.
I'm looking forward to that. But for now, I want our listeners to think about this. As you're building connections, both online and offline, pay attention to how those interactions make you feel.
Do they make you feel good or bad? Supportive or judged? Are they making your life better?
Because in the end, you want to be around people and communities that lift you up, inspire you, and make you feel connected.
All right, we're back, ready for the last part of our wellness deep dive. We've talked about food, exercise, mindfulness, the power of community, but then there's this big thing we haven't really addressed. How do we make all this wellness stuff work when we're always online? It's kind of a puzzle, isn't it? We have so many ways to connect, but more and more people feel lonely. It's like we're surrounded by digital connections, but still craving real human interaction.
Yeah, and it's easy to think, well, I'm talking to people online all the time, so that must be enough. But is it really that simple?
The thing is, those online interactions, they can be so different. Some can be great, supportive and meaningful, and you feel like you belong. But others can make you feel drained or even more alone. We need to pay attention to how those online connections are making us feel.
So it's not just about the time we spend online, but how we spend it and who we're spending it with.
Exactly. Are we having good conversations, helping each other, sharing things we care about? Or are we just scrolling and comparing ourselves to everyone else, getting sucked into all the negativity?
Okay, so that brings up a big question. How do we find a good balance? How do we use technology without losing those real-life connections that are so important?
I think it starts with noticing how you feel after you've been online. Do you feel energized and connected, or tired and down? That can tell you if you need to change your digital habits.
Like listening to what your body and mind are telling you.
Right, and then it's about setting boundaries. Maybe that means having times when you don't use technology at all. Or maybe it's being more careful about who you follow online, choosing things that make you feel good instead of bad.
Like creating a good digital environment for yourself, just like you would with your physical space.
Yeah, and probably most important, make those face-to-face connections whenever you can. Nothing can really replace being with other people, really being there with them.
I agree. There's something special about putting our phones away, making eye contact, and really listening. It's like hitting a refresh button for our minds and souls.
It reminds us that we need connection. We're wired for it. Technology can help us connect, but it's just a tool.
Right, we have to use it in a way that makes our lives better, not worse.
Here's something to think about. What if we use technology to make those real-life connections even stronger instead of replacing them?
Oh, that is interesting.
Like using social media to plan a hike with friends or video chatting with family who live far away.
It's about using technology to create more chances to connect.
Exactly. And remember, it's all about what works for you. There's no one right way to do it, as long as you're paying attention to your habits and taking care of yourself.
Well, that's it. We've gone through all these different parts of wellness, from what we eat to what we think to the people we have in our lives.
It's been a really interesting journey, and I hope it's been helpful for you.
Remember, wellness isn't about reaching a certain point. It's about constantly growing, learning about yourself, and finding what makes you feel good physically, mentally, and emotionally.
And as you continue on your own wellness journey, remember, you're not alone. There are so many people out there who care about these things, supporting each other, learning from each other, and trying to live healthier, happier lives.
So go out there, connect with people, try new things, and enjoy the journey. And be kind to yourself along the way. Until next time, keep exploring and learning.